Have you noticed this feeling in the air? A low-grade tension, like the faint smell of smoke in a building where the fire alarm never quite goes off. Or maybe the subtle smell of rot under the bed perfume. You walk down any major street in the US and you'll see it in the eyes of the people pretending not to notice the growing tent cities pitched under the overpasses. And you'll hear it in the way conversations have basically turned into shouting matches about whose version of the facts are true. You'll taste it in the food that somehow costs twice as much while containing half as much food and even less nutrition. The roads crack your suspension. The bridges look like relics from civilization long gone. And it's not just the cracks in the sidewalk, it's the cracks in the soul. Schools are underfunded, teachers underpaid, colleges cost the price of a house, and the house itself costs the price of a lifetime of indentured servitude. And jobs don't feel like careers anymore. They're just endless gigs strung together with side hustles, all while wages stagnate and debt climbs like mold up the walls. Are we having fun yet? And meanwhile, relationships erode, marriage and birth rates are in decline, loneliness is rampant, and people are turning to AI companions to fill the void. Kids are raised by smartphones, and adults soothe themselves with pills or booze or, the glowing slot machine in their pockets we call a phone these days. And it seems that mental illness is less a medical problem now and more like a traumatic cultural collective unconscious. We've got the climate alternating between droughts, floods, fire, and increasingly unpredictable storms. Well, insurance companies, they just quietly tiptoe out of entire states because of course they do. And as the planet reshapes itself, the country can't even agree on whether it's happening, or if it is, whether it's the planet's fault for being too sensitive. So this is collapse. It's not really a single cataclysmic event. It's more like 1,000 hairline fractures spreading across daily life. It's a death, not with a bang, but with a groan of disgust, a shrug, plenty of denial, and a prescription refill. Everyone's exhausted. Nearly everyone is broke and in some kind of debt. And everyone's supposed to just smile about it because toxic positivity gaslights us into doing so. And these are the omens. It's not a dramatic scene of fire raining from the sky, and it's not exactly barbarians at the gates. It's just a slow decay, eaten from the inside out. The empire, it isn't going to explode. It's going to deflate. Probably quietly, but awkwardly, like a balloon at a kid's birthday party. And when it finally gives out, those in denial will be shocked, but others won't be surprised at all. They'll just shrug and say, well, we saw it coming. So here's the funny thing about democracy in the US. It's mostly a suggestion box. You can drop your little paper in there every 4 years, but the people in charge, they're not actually reading it. They're too busy cashing checks from lobbyists. Noam Chomsky broke this down perfectly in Requiem for the American Dream. He called it the concentration of wealth and power. Basically, the rich write the rules, and the rest of us just get to cosplay as citizens. And you're told your voice matters, but it matters in the same way clapping at the end of a Marvel movie matters.
Now, America has really deceived a lot of people. And for years, people knew America as a great place, as a place where you can be able to find a solution to every single problem. And a lot of people wanted to associate themselves with America because they thought America was a great place. It was a great country. Now, everything we knew about America was a lie, it was a dream, and there is a system that was put in place to make sure all these happens, okay? There is a system that was put in place to make sure that in the eyes of people, this one should look true, and in the minds of people, this one should come and should look and should seem true, okay? But now, there's usually like we're talking about here about the myth of America and the reality of how it operates. We talk about the greatness of America, and we look at America itself, how it's look like, and we feel like this so-called and this greatness that we are being told about, it's not there. So there is two things. There is the myth of America, and there is the reality of how it really operates. The reality of how it really operates is different from the myth. It's different from what we were told about it. It's different from what people who have not been there think about America. Now, let's break it down. There is the dream versus the system. There is control through belief. There is why such system would exist, okay? And those are the things that I've come to break down for you. But before that, I want you to take a look at this video of this man who is trying to explain something very fundamental here about America, about how America is, about how America has lied to people about its greatness, about its hugeness, because we've been told about the American dream, we've been told about the greatness of America, we've been told about the power that America has and contains, and yes, they've been powerful for quite some time, but they made they were not powerful because they were really powerful, but they actually made their power exist by deceiving people, making people to understand they were this kind of people, yet they were not who they told us they were. And right now you can see what is happening in America. People really finding it difficult to survive because of the economy, because of high standards of living, like in terms of a lot of things. America is really finding it difficult to make its own people exist and to make its own people live better. And it's because of a few things that maybe in life, if they wouldn't have ever happened, maybe America would not be looking like the way it's looking like today. Let's take a look at this man who is speaking and telling the truth to the white Americans, and then I will come back and say something at the end of it. I'm going to ask you to subscribe to this channel. If you're watching me for the first time, I will really do appreciate. And for the 10 subscribers, I really say thank you to you. Now, as you're watching this video, prepare your thoughts, have them shared with me in the comment section. I will do my best to make sure I read all of them and give a response where possible. But until then, let's take a look at the video.
Man, And the whole thing is designed to look like it's working. I mean, we've got elections, debates, red versus blue, like a football game where the same corporation owns both teams. And you're supposed to pick a side, scream at your neighbors, and then ignore the fact that no matter who wins, Goldman Sachs keeps their skybox seats. So Chris Hedges called this the empire of illusion. He said the bread and circuses model never really went away. It just evolved and adapted over time. So, Rome had gladiators, but we have reality TV. They had coliseums. We have NFL stadiums with corporate sponsors. The point is the same. Keep people entertained, distracted, and just comfortable enough not to revolt. But the catch is that empires rot from the inside when the illusion wears thin. And when people realize no matter how many hours they work and they can't afford rent, when healthcare is a scam, higher education is debt bondage, and wages have been flat since the 70s, but billionaires are flying their pets on private jets, that's when the magic trick falls apart. And we're right there, squinting at the stage, starting to notice the wires holding the rabbit out of the hat. Now, the truth is, the U.S. is not really a democracy. It's more like an oligarchy in a democracy costume. It's Halloween every day, except the only ones trick-or-treating are oil executives and defense contractors. Oh, and let's not forget the pharmaceutical industry. And they're the ones walking away with all the candy, while you're left holding an empty pillowcase wondering why you even bothered. All right, so empires don't just fall because the bridges collapse or the aqueducts dry up. They fall when people stop being able to tell the difference between reality and entertainment. And let's face it, the U.S. has practically built an entire economy on not knowing the difference. Now, Kurt Anderson nailed this in his book, Fantasyland. His argument is that the U.S. has always had a soft spot for delusion. Puritans chasing visions, snake oil salesmen hawking miracle tonics, and nowadays we have influencers selling you things like NFTs of cartoon apes that were supposed to make you rich. The difference now is scale. We've built multi-billion-dollar industries out of unreality. We worship celebrities we'll never meet, and we buy products we don't need, and we swallow conspiracy theories because that's what happens when people can no longer agree upon what's real and what isn't. I think Chris Hedges put it more bluntly in Empire of Illusion. We are a culture addicted to spectacle. Rome had gladiators, we have billionaires slap fighting on Twitter. They had bread and circuses, we've got Disney adults in full costume screaming at cast members because the magic didn't feel authentic enough. And honestly, it makes sense. If the empire is collapsing around you, distraction is cheaper than dignity. The Romans got free grain and blood sports. We get streaming services and vape pens and domino promising you a new crust innovation on a regular basis. Different shape, but same indigestion. So the problem is that when fantasy becomes the default setting, people lose their ability to confront reality. And we live in a country where the climate collapse is happening in real time, but half the population thinks it's a hoax, and the other half is too busy binge watching apocalypse content on Netflix to do anything about it. And the irony is that we're romanticizing collapse before it's even fully here. It's like watching a horror movie while the house is actually on fire. And underneath the spectacle, there's this quiet despair. Now, sociologists call this deaths of despair. Suicides, overdoses, alcoholism, addiction. People numbing themselves because reality has become too raw, meaningless, and frankly, just too unbearable. Nonetheless, the empire doesn't mind, and it doesn't care if you're distracted by TikTok or if you're invisible to society, as long as you keep feeding the machine until you're empty, until you're used up. So this is where we are now. We are a society anesthetized by fantasy, collapsing in real time, but watching it on screens as if it's entertainment, which I guess it is. But the fall of the U.S. empire, it isn't going to look like Rome burning while Nero played a liar. It's going to look more like an unboxing video on YouTube that cuts to black halfway through. Now, the thing about empires is they all think they're special. The United States swears it's the exception. Because, U.S. exceptionalism. But, of course, Rome thought that too. And the British thought the sun would never set on their empire. But now, the only place it doesn't set is a pub at midnight with a bartender yelling "last call." And the Soviets, well, they had a whole superpower image to maintain. Parades, missiles, astronauts, etc. And it all looked untouchable until one day it wasn't. The Berlin Wall, it didn't fall because of one speech. It fell because the cracks had been spreading for decades. And then one day, people just stopped pretending that it worked. And that's more or less how collapse happens. It's not overnight, and it's not with one dramatic explosion. It's a slow erosion until suddenly the structure can't hold itself up anymore. And honestly, it appears that the U.S. is right on schedule. And, we've got the military overstretch of Rome, the financial hubris of the British, and we've got the political theater of the Soviet Union. Except our version comes with commercials and sponsored content. And it's kind of funny when you think about it, because Rome distracted with people with gladiators, but we've got influencers selling hair gummies. Yeah. Humans are a wild, weird lot. So, The British Empire looted spices from half the planet. And in the US, we have Taco Bell serving you a Doritos Locos taco like it's a cultural innovation. The Soviet Union had propaganda, but we've got Fox News and MSNBC doing the same thing, just with fancier lighting and angrier graphics, I guess. So the echoes are all there, and you can see them if you squint hard enough. Bread and circuses, overreach and arrogance. A ruling class that's convinced it's untouchable. A working class that's exhausted but still told they should be grateful. And we have a culture that's so wrapped up in its own mythology, it can't even imagine the story ending any other way. And throughout history, every empire believed it was different and impervious. I mean, the US thinks Netflix and nuclear weapons will somehow keep it afloat forever. But that's kind of the punchline. Collapse doesn't care about your confidence, and it doesn't care about your slogans or your flags or your GDP charts. Collapse just shows up quietly and then all at once. And when it does, people will act shocked and they'll say, how could this happen here? In the United States of America? The same way the Romans probably said, how could this happen in Rome? We were civilized. We had aqueducts. But the truth is, no empire sees its own reflection until it's too late. So I think the strangest thing about living in a collapsing empire is how normal it feels. You'd think it would be utter chaos. Fire in the streets, the military on every corner. But most of the time, it's just people going to work, buying lattes, posting memes about how broke they are. And collapse doesn't feel like an action movie. It feels like waiting at the DMV. Endless, boring decay. Now there's a term for this called hypernormalization. And the Soviet Union went through this towards the end of the 1980s. I did a video on hypernormalization, which you can find here on the channel if you're interested. Now, apparently, denial is just easier. It's easier to scroll on your phone and just binge another season and convince yourself that somebody smarter is handling it. Somebody somewhere has all this under control, right? Because if you really stop to face it, if you looked the collapse like straight in the eyes, it would probably crush you. Alan Watts once said that part of the problem is people take life too seriously, as if death were some kind of mistake. That's denial in a nutshell. Pretending we're immortal and that empires are immortal, pretending your landlord raising your rent 40% is just inflation and not a sign that the system is eating itself alive. But denial has a cost, and that's where you get conspiracy theories. People grasping at any story that makes all the chaos make sense. So hypernormalization makes it easier to believe lizard people are in charge, rather than accept that no one's in charge, and the ship is just drifting aimlessly. And we're all numbing ourselves in various ways to various degrees, some of us to the point of deaths of despair. This isn't an accident. It's ultimately people opting out of a game that feels hopelessly rigged. You can barely pay rent. You can't afford health insurance. You can't find meaning anywhere in your life, so you find escape. Whether it's in a bottle, a pill, a needle, and more often than anything else, a screen. Whatever. Collapse is quiet. It's personal. Collapse is millions of people slowly giving up in one way or another. And then there are the optimists, the ones who say, well, we'll innovate our way out of all this. Well, maybe. Just like Rome thought they could invent their way out of the barbarian invasions, or like the Soviets who thought they could 5-year plan themselves into paradise. The US thinks it's going to beat collapse with an app. Download the new Empire 2.0 update, now with 20% less poverty. The truth is, denial feels good until it doesn't. It feels like safety until the roof finally caves in. And by the time you stop pretending, it's just too late. Well, I think the only way out is through. Now, here's the thing about collapse. It's rarely a single epic and horrific event. It's not like in the movies where everyone screams at the sky is turning red or whatever. Most of the time it's just weird, calmly weird. Like the moment your fridge stops working and you realize you've been eating expired yogurt for a week and somehow survived. So after the Empire stops pretending it's invincible, life doesn't end. It just mutates. For example, downtowns that used to have empty storefronts, they're now empty storefronts with a community garden in the front. Empty parking lots become unofficial skate parks. Social media echo chambers, they're still there, but people start using them to organize neighbors for mutual aid instead of arguments about politicians and sports ball. Now, collapse doesn't erase humanity. It just forces us to find the cracks and live in them. And it teaches us to improvise. Now, in some tiny, scattered ways, I think the U.S. is already starting to look like this. Multi-generational households aren't some sad statistic anymore. They're actually people rediscovering how to rely on each other. So, in addition to those things, I think, the near future might look something like this. Side hustles aren't just for extra cash. They're teaching skills that no corporation is ever going to pay you to learn. Water systems failing. Community wells and rain barrels suddenly feel like innovation. I think we start seeing creativity and resilience sprout in the least glamorous places. Gradually, maybe people start taking matters into their own hands. Growing food, living off grid in various capacities, doing even small things in the community like do-it-yourself pothole repair. It's absurd, of course, because the empire was supposed to promise progress and eternal prosperity. But now, it's a half-empty Walmart parking lot with a guy selling kombucha on the hood of his car. The U.S. it may still exist on maps, but on the ground it looks like a civilization trying to remember how to survive without corporate HR and billion-dollar ad campaigns or reality TV governors. And yes, there's grief and pain. People mourn the world that was, the faux stability, the promises, all the illusions. But I think in the middle of that grief, there's also this strange sense of liberation. And it's terrifying, but oddly hopeful. So, without the empire constantly whispering in your ear that you need to be richer, thinner, faster, younger, more productive, and so forth, I think you get to actually breathe, finally. Maybe you get to reimagine what life could be, even in miniature abstract ways. Now, don't get me wrong. I think collapse, it's chaotic and painful and undoubtedly confusing, but it's also a weird kind of opportunity. At least that's the way I see it currently. I think the trick is in noticing it before you're buried under the bills, the misinformation, the debt, and the despair. And look, collapse isn't a finish line. It's a landscape. And right now, I think the U.S. is just starting to show these small glimpses of the first blurry sketches of that new, awkward, unpolished map. Okay. So what do you actually do when the empire you've been raised to worship is quietly rotting around you? Well, the first thing I'd suggest is take a breath. No, seriously, you're going to need some oxygen. The collapse itself isn't really up for debate, but how you respond to it is. The first thing is just admitting how absurd it all is. The U.S. isn't suddenly going to morph into Switzerland with better pizza. It's not going to clean itself up and start running smoothly. It's going to be messy and ridiculous, sometimes hilarious in the darkest of ways, and sometimes it's going to be horrifying. And the sooner you embrace radical acceptance, the lighter it all feels. You stop wasting energy fighting the tide and you start learning how to swim sideways. Then there's the question of what you can actually control. You're not going to fix Congress or the IRS or the stock market, but you can cook your own meals, learn how to grow food, and maybe learn to fix your own sink. It's a start. You can learn a skill that might actually matter in a post-collapse world. I think those small, stubborn acts of self-sufficiency are little rebellions. They keep you sane and they make you feel less like you're chained to a dying machine. And I think they can lead to bigger changes down the road. I mean, we got to start somewhere. Now, as much as everyone hates to hear this, community matters. Institutions are already failing, and they're only going to get worse. Governments, corporations, social services, none of them are really reliable anymore. So you're left with people. Family, friends, neighbors, weird little co-ops, multi-generational households. It's not romantic. It's survival with a little humanity mixed in. And yeah, it's messy and awkward and usually annoying, but it's still better than going it completely alone. And look, I say this as a loner myself. Another thing, try to stay awake, but don't burn yourself out. Collapse awareness, it can definitely be exhausting. And I think between conspiracy rabbit holes and media noise and all the economic stress, it's like drinking from a fire hose aimed directly at your brain. So pick your battles, read some Chomsky or Hedges if that helps you vent and think straighter, but also read up on how to build self-sufficiency as an individual and within a community. And look, don't forget the simple things like watching a sunset and laugh at how idiotic and amazing all of this is. Write something. Embrace simple pleasures. And I always say, humor is a kind of resistance. I like mine. I take mine dry and dark. Thank you very much. And while you're at it, keep questioning everything, including these so-called solutions, because empires collapse when they stop questioning themselves. We shouldn't fall into the same trap. Ask why things are the way they are. Challenge assumptions. Be brutally honest with yourself. Exercise critical thinking. Try a little radical honesty, even though it may be scary. And maybe share what you figured out with someone who isn't a total idiot. Ideally, someone who can also laugh at a joke about a crumbling bridge or whatever. Now look, I don't have all the answers or any definitive answers really. I'm just a cog here like everyone else, and I'm just doing my best under the circumstances. So I think in the end it really comes down to this. Embrace impermanence and learn to live in the present moment. As cliche as it sounds, nothing lasts forever, not even the United States as we know it. And yeah, that may sound grim, but I think it's also freeing. I think you get to define meaning for yourself instead of waiting for a broken system to hand you one. And you get to carve out something akin to purpose in the middle of collapse. And sure, it's chaotic and ridiculous. It's heartbreaking. But it's also completely, terrifyingly alive. I don't think collapse has to be a horror story. I think it can also be a stage for honesty and creativity and ultimately connection. And if nothing else, at the very least, it gives you some incredible material for stories. So this is it. The U.S. is limping along, dressed up in its corporate Halloween costume, pretending everything is fine while the potholes get deeper, and the student loans pile higher, and the politicians carry on with their bad acting performance. And maybe all that sounds terrifying, and it is, but the absurdity is almost comforting in a way. The empire doesn't have a master plan, and the sky isn't going to fall like in a movie trailer. It's just crumbling piece by piece, with all of us caught somewhere in the mess, trying to figure out which pieces are ours to hold on to and which ones we should take with a grain of salt. So the good news is you get to pick your part. You can focus on the little things that matter: community, creativity, resilience, humor. You can refuse to be distracted by the manufactured spectacle. And you can be honest with yourself about what's broken and what you can actually do about it, if anything. And yes, it's grimy, it's grim, and it's hilarious sometimes in that can't believe this is real way. But that's life inside a crumbling empire. You keep breathing, you keep thinking, and maybe you find some dignity in all the insanity. And what else is there? So, when someone asks you if the US is collapsing, you can shrug, pour yourself a drink, and say, yeah, but at least the Wi-Fi still works, mostly, for now. Because collapse is inevitable. But I think perspective and a little gallows humor can make it survivable. All right, that's all I got.
Right, welcome back again. Now, there is the dream and we have the system. Now, the dream versus the system. The dream has been told, the dream has been spoken out, and many people believed in the dream, But again, the system was brought. Instead of the dream being made to come true, the system was brought to make the dream delusional, like to make the dream appear like it is happening, or appear like people are living in the same dream that people are told about, yet that was not what it is. Now, America was founded on ideals, okay? Freedom, equality, and opportunity. The ideas became the American dream, okay? Freedom, equality, and opportunity. Freedom, equality, and opportunity. These are things that people were promised, that there is freedom in America, there is equality in America, and there is opportunities in America. When you live in America, you'll not lack jobs, you'll not lack school entrance, you'll not be able to that there is a lot of opportunities. And that is why you realize that many people from all over the world, especially from Africa, they looked at Africa, they felt like Africa is a bad place to be, and therefore we want to go to a land of opportunities. And a land of opportunities in this case was supposed to be the United States of America, as it was placed to be. Then we had equality. People lived knowing in America, people are treated equally. In America, people are treated better. In our countries here in Africa and many other countries in the world, people might not be treated equally, but when we mention America, there is equality, okay? Because that equality was also given to the system for the system to make it look true. And there was freedom. In America, there is freedom of speech, there is freedom of anything. You can do anything you want, because there is that freedom. And also this freedom was put in the system for system to make sure it exists even when it was not existing. So America was built on ideals, okay? It was founded on ideals: freedom, equality, and opportunities. So these ideas became the American dream, okay? The American dream. What America was to pursue and was to become. But in practice, the system often served a small groups interests. Okay, so those with wealth, land, or political power. The myth of equality made people believe the system was fair, while in reality, structural inequalities, slavery, class systems, corporate control, media manipulation persisted. So the so-called the freedom, equality, and opportunities now, because instead of many, like everybody come or everybody being part of it, it was directed to a certain kind of people: wealthy people, people with political power, people with land, and people that have money and they can have a say in the community or in the society. Yeah, it doesn't matter they're giving the right directions or the wrong directions, but because they have power, they can be listened to, whether you like it or not. So this equality that you're talking about, and the freedom you're talking about, and the opportunities that you're talking about were only directed to a certain kind of people, a certain group of people. People who are wealthy, people who have political power, people who have lands and all that. But the question is, why do you think that other people are not complaining about it? Why do you think that other people were not saying anything about it? They were not crying about it. They didn't find it difficult. They didn't like they couldn't oppose it. It's because now, after this dream was mentioned to everybody, and now it wasn't directed to everybody, it was only directed to a certain kind of people. Now the system was put in place. This system was to make the poor white Americans believe that everything is okay, believe that the fact that we are performing and practicing equality, freedom, and opportunity issues to only wealthy people, it's because of these and these and these and these. And the system made everything make sense, even when it didn't make any sense. The system made it make sense. Okay? And so people believed everything is okay, even when things were not very much okay. The system made things look okay, even when it was not really okay. So the myth of equality, that's why you call it the myth of equality, because it's a myth. It is not the reality. Yeah, remember we're talking about the myth of America and the reality of how it really operates. That's what we're talking about. So the myth of equality made people believe the system was fair. The myth of equality made people believe the system was fair, while in reality, structural inequalities, slavery, class systems, corporate control, media manipulation persisted. It continued. It was there. Okay? So the dream became a kind of a narrative tool, yeah, because it wasn't bringing and making any sense. So it became a narrative. It was just like a story or a song, yeah, a song that we are singing on to a god. Of course it won't dance. So it was a narrative tool. It kept people hopeful, working hard, and identifying with the system rather than questioning it. Yeah, so people had to cooperate. People had to adjust to the system. People had to concur with the system. They never questioned it, because the work of the system, or the system, was given an assignment of making people believe that everything was okay, making people believe that things are working out well, things are going on well, even when things were not really going on well. Okay? The system, the assignment, the mission of the system was to make people believe everything is okay, even when things were not okay. Yeah, so people concurred with it. People worked along the system. People continued surviving, and they didn't know the system was actually deceiving them or actually destroying them. They did not know. Okay, so they never questioned the system. The work of the system was to make sure people will not and will no longer question it. That was the work of the system. Now, number two, we have the control through belief. Now, under the control through belief, if people believe they lived in the land of free, they are less likely to notice the ways they are being controlled. Okay, now it is just let me say it's a tool of manipulation, and this has been something that the white Americans, or let me say the white supremacists have always been using. Like they would pretend, like let's take for example, you see, like African countries, the white supremacists have been existing in African countries for years, and people find it difficult to ask them out, to say, you people have been here for quite some time, you need now to go out because you are living here for free. Why? Because these people come and take 100% of what belongs to you, and you don't know they are taking 100% of what belongs to you, because number one, they've made you to believe that everything you have does not make any sense. If you have gold, 100 bars of gold, number one, they create a system that makes you believe the 100 bars of gold that you have does not make any sense. It doesn't have value, it is not important, and you don't need to have it. So they come and take it from you because they know the value of whatever you have. So when they take a whole amount of it from you, a time comes when they now bring it in form of money. Yeah, I'm just trying to make an example, to give an example. So they take 100 bars of gold from you. After making you believe these 100 bars of gold that you have does not make any sense, they take it from you. They go and change 1 bar of gold into a certain amount of money. Then they bring to you that money. So they're making you to believe this are good because you didn't know the value of gold. Yeah? So they took it. They went away with it. They made it valuable. They brought money because you only know the use of money. You don't know the use of gold and all that. You don't know how to change it into money and all of that. And then after bringing it into you, you feel like they are good people. Now, they have remained with a lot. They have given you a few. But that a few that they have given you, it is just to manipulate you and make you look like make you see them as better people. And remember, the whole amount belonged to you. So the white Americans, number one, they're being told and they're made to believe you are living in a free land. You see, somebody might come and take you, or maybe find you suffering and take you somewhere and give you maybe, let me say, shelter or something for free. But number one, this person knows very well you have skills of doing something. So he's manipulating you. He's making you to believe that he helped you. And then he begins using your skills to make himself rich, to make himself a better person. And that is what has been happening. White Americans have been manipulated. They have been made to suffer for years. But did they realize their suffering? They did not. Why? Because the system was in place to maintain them. Whenever they feel like they are tired or they feel like they are pressed, the system comes in and made them believe, no, you're not suffering, you are okay. Or even if you are suffering because of 1, 2, 3 things. When you look into these maybe reasons that they've given to you, the reasons for your suffering, you look at them and feel like these reasons make sense, yet they don't really make any sense. So I said, if people believe they lived in the land of the free, they are less likely to notice the ways they are being controlled through, number one, economic system. We have debt, we have wage, we have labor, we have consumerism. So under economic system, the economic system has been created. We have also the information control system, which has also been created, and we have the educational and history system. So under information control system, we have media shaping perception, and education and history, we have telling a selective story about America's past. So they choose a selective story, a story that makes sense, a story that makes you happy, and then they tell you about the story and all that. You keep on believing you're greater people. That's what we've been saying. Americans have believed they're superior all the times, and that's a lie. Americans have not been superior, but the system made them believe they are superior. So when they look at other people, they feel like, we're better than these people. We can't be compared to these people. We are better than these people. We are supposed to be having the privilege. We are supposed to be protected. We are supposed, when it comes to money and wealth and riches, we are supposed to have it. When it comes to, let me say, protection, security, and all that, we're supposed to have it. That is why the African Americans in the United States of America, they've been given less privilege. It doesn't matter, like in everything. A black person commits a mistake, a white person also commits the same mistake. But when it is time for trial for the two people, one person will be, like for example, attention will be drawn to one person more than the other person. For example, if it's charging them, a white person might be charged a quarter of what a black person was charged. Like for example, somebody told me that, if a black person in the United States of America commits a crime, they call it a community thing. They say black people do. Like, it's a community thing. They gather all the black people and blame all of them for a mistake of a one person because he was a black person. So they'd go around saying black people are criminals, black people are crime doers, black people, all of that. But when a white person commits the same mistake, do you know what they say? For example, it was a crime against a white person. They will say that was just a beef they had, two of them, and it is something that they can sort out themselves. But a black person will even be taken to court and he will be charged for that. Okay? Black people are oftenly harassed by the police while just walking alongside the road, not doing anything. They haven't committed any mistake. But whenever a black person is seen walking alongside the road, they just look at him and they feel like, this guy is a criminal. Even if the person is not really a criminal, they just look at him and say, this guy looks like a criminal. I even saw another video where a pregnant woman was just walking alongside the road and the police are attacking this woman, saying, you are walking from at a wrong side of the road. She was supposed to be walking from the other side. She's now walking from this other side. And the police had to stood him on the road, and really they wanted to arrest him simply because she was walking from the wrong side of the road and she was a pregnant black woman. Then a white man came and said, you are harassing this woman because she's black. It would have been a white woman, you wouldn't have harassed her the way you are harassing this black woman. So the white people, even when it comes to the matters concerning the police and all that, the way white people have been treated, they have been treated differently from how blacks have been treated. Okay? And it is a system that made white people believe that we are greater, we are superior, we are supposed to be treated better than black people. If it's suffering, blacks are supposed to suffer more than we suffer, because suffering is suffering is supposed to be for the black people. Whites are not supposed to suffer. That is why you realize, like right now, America is going through a difficult time right now, and white Americans are really crying. But what shocks them and what really surprises them is the fact that black people are not complaining. And they're like, how comes? How on earth whites are complaining, or whites, we are suffering and crying because of bad economy, because of high standards of living, and blacks are not? They wonder. Why do they wonder? They wonder because in life, and for a very long time, they've known black people as people who are a subject to suffering. And so they wonder, why are blacks not suffering? So the reality is now hitting them. It was not about the race. It wasn't about the color, but it is something that can get to anybody. The problem that happened to them, the system lied to them that they are immortals. They can't die. They can't suffer. They can't cry. But blacks can suffer, they can cry, they can be poor, and all that. You see? So, the system has made them believe a certain kind of things. On information control system, the media has been manipulated. You see, when you're talking about the mainstream media's reporting things that are not true. So the media has been manipulated. The things that the media is reporting, many a times you'll find out that these things are favoring the white Americans at most, favoring them, showing that to the world that America is better, America is great, America is big, America is huge. Take a look at the CNN, take a look at the BBC, and all these big mainstream medias. They have been manipulated. So outside here in the world, we look at America as a certain country that is very powerful, very great. A big country is supposed to go there and get jobs, a land of equality, a land of opportunities, a land of we talked about the freedom, equality, freedom, opportunity. So we feel like if you go to America, we are going to be subjected to equality, freedom, and so we look at America as a beautiful country where when we go there, we can get good education, we can get jobs, we can get so that is how America has been put to look like. So this isn't necessarily a single conspiracy. It's more like a set of overlapping systems that reinforce the national myth. It really reinforces the national myth. It is not the reality in the ground. The reality in the ground is very different, but the myth now is also something else. So people, when they're looking at the myth, they find hope. They find this power. They feel like, we are people, we can do better, we are great people and all that. But the reality now is really hitting them. So the question remains, why such system would exist? That is the main question. Now, it is because belief is power. When I make you to believe something, or when I want you to believe something, I feel like belief is power. I will make you believe in something because I know this will bring power, this will make power. So belief is power. So the system will make them to believe in something because they know very well belief is power. So because belief is power, if you control how people see themselves and their nation, you don't need to control them by force. If you control how people believe, how people see themselves and their nation, you don't need to control them by force. Yeah, just control how people see themselves, how people believe, okay, how people see their nation, how people believe or how people see themselves, how people see their nation. If you can be able to control that, you don't need to control them by force. Okay, they'll maintain the system themselves. That's how propaganda, nationalism, and consumer culture can all work together. They turn myths into self-sustaining realities. That is what they do, turning myths into self-sustaining realities. And that is what America has always been. That is what America has always been for years. And that is the truth, the reality in America. That is how it has always been for years. So there is the truth on the ground. There is the real thing that is happening in America on the ground. But again, there is another thing that has just been a myth, a dream that can never come true because there are no people to make it come true. Everybody who comes by, many of them, they're just liars. Some are thieves. Some don't even care about the lives of other people. Some do things however they want to do them. And they've made people to believe that they are the same people who can make it happen. Yet, they're not the people who can make it happen. And so, the world has thought about America in a certain way. And therefore, people need to know the truth. And people need to understand what is really happening. There is the reality on the ground. And there is another thing that is just a myth to make people believe a certain way. And that one has been made by the system. That one has been placed in position and sustained and kept active by the system. Tell me what you think in the comment section. I will do my best to make sure I read all the comments and give a response where possible. I am the African Streamline. Thanks for coming. Thanks for being here. I will expect you to tell me what you think. I'll do my best to make sure I read all the comments and give a response where possible. But until then, I say Thank you for today and welcome back for the next episode.